Hello everyone and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The faint fluorescent lights inside the Los Angeles County Coroner's office flickered briefly, then remained steady, as if the building itself was hesitant to accept what it had just been asked to handle. On the chilly steel table lay a body clothed in a white sheet, the outline undeniably feminine, the toes branded with the name Luna Noaza. Chief Baker stood at the foot of the table, arms clenched so tightly that his knuckles blanched. Dr. Lee Finnegan sat beside him, adjusted his glasses, and swallowed so hard that the sound echoed around the room. "You're sure?" Baker said. It wasn't a question, but an indictment directed at fate. Lee exhaled via his nose. "I'm sure this isn't Luna." He reached for the sheet and drew it back just enough to show the face. Pale, calm, lips colored the same color Poppy had worn to last month's Forrester charity dinner. The similarities were uncanny. Luna's hair, cheekbones, and even the tiny scar above her left brow were all injuries she had while falling off a mechanical bull in Wyoming when she was 19. Everything is perfect, except that the blood type on the preliminary report did not match. Except the dental records, rushed in from Luna's last cleaning 6 weeks earlier, revealed a filled molar that this corpse had never had. Except for the slight surgical line hiding behind the hairline, nearly imperceptible unless you knew where to look, Lee knew the skull had been opened and closed within the previous 48 hours. Baker's jaw flexed. Lee gave a single, deliberate nod. She staged her own death. She used a cadaver that had been prepared for medical donation. Someone from the inside assisted her. Someone who knew we'd just do a cursory exam once the ID appeared solid. Baker stepped away from the table and reached for his phone. "I want the real Luna handcuffed before the press conference tomorrow. She thinks she is clever. She believes we will bury this and let the city mourn a martyr." His voice lowered to a snarl. "She doesn't get to kill 2 people, fake a 3rd corpse, and walk away a hero." Lee said with hesitation. 2 people. Poppy is actually dead, Lee. That section wasn't staged. Luna required a fresh corpse that would not be missed for days. She took her own mother. The room appeared to shrink around them. Outside in the corridor, the night shift orderly pushed an empty gurney by without looking inside. Neither man saw the slight scuff marks on the linoleum. At that exact time, Luna was 3 miles away in a loft above Il Giardino, pouring 2 fingers of Deacon's best scotch into a crystal tumbler. She wore black silk pajamas and a contented smile that would have chilled anyone who genuinely knew her. On the coffee table was a burner phone and a passport bearing the name Lucia Moreau, complete with a French visa stamped 3 days prior. She lifted the glass to the darkening window. "To absent friends," she whispered as she sipped. The scheme was exquisite in its brutality. First, permanently silence Poppy. The woman had finally remembered too much about Tom Starr's death and was hours away from telling Bill Spencer everything. Then, obtain a Jane Doe cadaver from the medical school where Lee's former classmate owed her a favor that could never be repaid. A little cosmetic surgery, a changed toe tag, a few tears at the crime scene for the surveillance cameras, et voila. Luna Noaza, tragic victim, dead at the hands of an unknown burglar. The city would be in a rage. Steffi would be demonized yet again. And Luna? Luna would leave with $20 million in cryptocurrencies, a new face in 6 months, and the delicious pleasure of knowing Lee Finnegan would live with the shame of failing to save her for the rest of his life. She'd underestimated 2 things. First, Lee would insist on examining the body himself rather than signing the certificate and returning home to his frozen meal. Second, Chief Baker, lovely, plodding, dog-with-a-bone Baker, could smell the lie on her from 50 yards out. The burner buzzed. A single text message from an unknown number reveals their knowledge. Luna maintained a constant smile. She deleted the message, completed her scotch, and started packing a single Louis Vuitton duffel. There was still Prague. Still in Lisbon. She still owned the Mendoza villa she had purchased through a shell business. She had contingencies. But as she zipped the bag, the loft's front door blew inward, sounding like a gunshot. Flashlights sliced through the darkness. LAPD. Put your hands where we can see them, Luna. She froze for half a heartbeat, just long enough for the cameras to catch a glimpse of genuine dread beneath the mask. Then the old Luna reappeared, the one who had sweet-talked her way out of trouble. She raised both hands gently, allowing the silk sleeves to slip down her wrists like a magician, exposing that nothing was hidden. "Chief Baker," she whispered softly across broken glass. "I was about to call you. Thank God you are here." Baker went forward, cuffs already out, and stated, "Someone has been sending me threats ever since they killed my mother. Save that for the jury, dear. Or, better yet, keep it for Poppy when you find her below in the morgue drawer you left her in." For the first time in years, Luna Noaza was speechless. They let her out in front of the photographers, who had inexplicably assembled outside Il Giardino 15 minutes earlier, informed off by Baker himself, of course. Cameras flashed. Questions detonated like grenades. "Is it true that you faked your own death? Have you murdered your mother?" "Why, Luna?" She kept her head up, as she'd practiced in the mirror 100 times, but the tears wouldn't come. The performance was over. The house lights were turned on, and the crowd could now see the blood on the stage. At the precinct, Lee was waiting in the observation room. He appeared 10 years older than he did that morning. When they brought Luna in, she met his gaze through the glass and smiled, small and almost gentle. "Hi, Daddy," she said to the reflection, realizing he could hear her. "Do you miss me?" Lee did not respond. He merely turned and went away, his shoulders bowed inward, as if he were carrying something much heavier than pain. Baker entered the interrogation room alone. He did not sit. He placed a single photograph on the table between them, Poppy Noaza, real and undeniably dead, her eyes permanently open in amazement. "Start talking," he instructed. "And this time, Luna, every word must be true. Because the only hero in the story will be the one who locks you up for the rest of your life." Luna stared at the photograph for a long time. She then leaned back, crossed her legs, and started laughing. Outside the room, the recorder light remained steady red. Inside, the legend of Luna Noaza, tragic heroine, victim, and martyr, met its untimely demise. And somewhere in the city, the true grief for Poppy finally began. The news of Luna's alleged death spread like wildfire throughout the town, shocking everyone involved in her life, her background, and, most notably, her convoluted relationship with Lee. For days, many spoke in amazement, unable to reconcile the sweet, confused girl they once knew with the idea that she had vanished. However, beneath the sadness and uncertainty, signs began to emerge that something about the tragedy did not make up. Her disappearance, the strange discrepancies surrounding the body's discovery, and the suspicious lack of definitive proof all contributed to a rising sense of concern, particularly among those who believed Luna would never depart without trace. What no one knew was that this alleged death was nothing more than a carefully orchestrated ruse, an act designed to deceive, manipulate, and protect secrets Luna was no longer capable of carrying on her own. Lee, who had risen to hero status in previous crises, was once again drawn into the midst of developing disaster. His senses, honed over years of managing one calamity after another, alerted him almost instantly that something was awry. Though many people rushed to accept Luna's death as a tragic truth, Lee remained focused on the contradictions, refusing to allow the emotional fog obscure his analytical intellect. He replayed every memory of Luna, every conversation, and every hint she may have dropped, and eventually, a frightening truth dawned on him. Luna was not dead. Someone had gone to tremendous lengths to make it seem like she was. If she wasn't dead, she was somewhere out there, hiding, fleeing, or compelled to remain silent. Rumors quickly spread that a body had been recognized as Luna's, but Lee was not convinced. He persisted on personally reviewing the material, refusing to allow emotions or panic to impair his judgment. The body, he realized, had enough resemblance to Luna to fool casual scrutiny, but minor details revealed it, things that only someone who knew her well would notice. The height wasn't quite correct. The form of the jaw was somewhat incorrect. Most crucially, There were no recognizable symptoms of Luna's little birthmark, which she had always been self-conscious about. Whoever arranged this had done their study, but not sufficiently to deceive Lee. At the same time, Baker, the always observant investigator, began to notice flaws in the account that supported Luna's reported death. Witness reports clashed with the reported time of her disappearance. Security footage from the location where the body was discovered was strangely destroyed just hours before the tragedy. Even Luna's own digital accounts, which should have been inactive, showed evidence of recent activity. Baker, who had always taken pleasure in his ability to identify dishonesty, felt something shift within of him. Luna had always been emotionally weak, but that did not mean she could fake her own death. Unless, of course, there was something far worse hiding beneath the surface, something that had motivated her to devise such a complicated hoax. Determined to find answers, Baker looked deeper, revisiting discussions he had with Luna in the weeks leading up to her abduction. He remembers her appearing distracted, almost twitchy, as if she was carrying a weight she couldn't put down. He remembered how she avoided direct concerns about her safety and became indignant when he addressed the prospect of someone hurting her. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that Luna had been acting long before her death. She had been playing a version of herself, hiding anxiety behind smiles and burying despair underneath polite discourse. As Baker pursued his inquiry, he discovered the first tangible evidence that Luna's death was staged, a witness who claimed to have seen Luna alive after the official time of her purported death. The witness described her as agitated, peeking over her shoulder, clutching a tiny bag, and running rapidly as if someone was following her. Baker initially disregarded the claim as misidentification, but the witness was persistent, offering details that only someone who had actually seen Luna could convey. This realization ignited a fire within Baker. If the witness was telling the truth, Luna had not been a victim, but an architect.
But why?
That was the question that gnawed everyone, especially Lee, who had spent so much of his life defending those he loved. He knew Luna was complicated. She carried deep emotional wounds, scars from past tragedies that she rarely talked about. She had made mistakes, some unintentional, some deliberate, but nothing seemed worthy of a dramatic absence or sophisticated deception. Unless she'd been threatened. Unless she thought that faking her death was the only way to avoid whatever peril lurked behind those doors. As the truth began to emerge, Baker discovered a trail of clues that appeared to have been left on purpose, almost as if Luna wanted someone to discover she was still alive. Perhaps she assumed Baker was intelligent enough to discover the truth. Perhaps she was counting for Lee to see the deceit. Perhaps she underestimated how quickly the facade would fall. Baker eventually discovered the key to solving the mystery, film from an untampered traffic camera. There, unmistakably, was Luna, alive, disguised, and entering a vehicle connected to someone with known criminal ties. It became evident that Luna hadn't orchestrated her own death. She had received assistance, but it had come with conditions. Baker broadened his inquiry, delving into the networks linked to the car owner, and the web of secrets grew darker and more complex than anyone could have imagined. Meanwhile, Lee, unwilling to sit idle, launched his own search for Luna. He relied on intuition and emotional connection rather than poor leads, which Baker ignored. He remembered Luna's favorite places, the routes she traveled when she was nervous, and the individuals she relied on when she felt overwhelmed. He gradually, piece by piece, began to piece together her motivations. Luna wasn't fleeing punishment or duty. She was fleeing someone who had cornered her emotionally, psychologically, and possibly physically. She had attempted to break free in the only manner she thought she could, by erasing herself. But neither Lee nor Baker expected what Baker discovered next. Luna had been acting even before the supposed death scene. She had fooled almost everyone around her, portraying herself as delicate and bewildered while discreetly planning her escape. Baker, after studying hours of footage and dozens of testimony, eventually put it together. Luna's shaking hands, worried gaze, and apologies were all part of a play. She'd misled them. She had tricked them. Baker appreciated her ability to deceive so successfully, yet he felt deceived. Her actions had squandered resources, caused emotional distress, and put several others under suspicion. Baker's adoration rapidly turned to irritation as further proof of her dishonesty surfaced. She'd manufactured a crime. She had twisted the justice system. And, regardless of her motivation, her acts had consequences. Baker issued a warrant for Luna's arrest rather than her rescue, based on the weight of the evidence. It was official. Luna would be imprisoned for arranging her own death, fabricating evidence, and hindering an ongoing inquiry. When Lee learned about Baker's decision, he was divided. Part of him wished to shield Luna from punishment, knowing she had been desperate and terrified. Another part of him realized Baker was correct. Her acts had caused actual injury. However, Lee decided Luna deserved compassion rather than judgment, and he refused to let her face the consequences alone. If he could find her and bring her back safely, he might be able to persuade the authorities to look into the whole story, not just the crime but also the reasons for it. Lee pursued every lead available, guided by instinct and a firm belief that Luna still trusted him. When he eventually found her, she was hiding in a secluded, virtually abandoned cabin on the outskirts of the city. The reunion was bittersweet. Luna, weary and emotionally distraught, confessed everything. She admitted to exchanging bodies with the help of someone who offered safety. She claimed that she had been duped by persons who fueled her dread, convinced her that vanishing was her only option. And she disclosed that she knew Baker would figure it out, that a part of her wanted to be found, for the nightmare to end, even if it meant facing the consequences. Lee listened, caught between sympathy and disappointment. Despite her flaws, he had always seen her potential. And now he saw someone shattered, someone who didn't trust herself enough to seek treatment, someone who thought her sorrow made her unworthy of rescue. But Lee, once again assuming the role of reluctant hero, refused to abandon her. He told her that she needed to face what she had done rather than run away from it, and that he would support her throughout the process. When Baker arrived to take Luna into jail, she did not resist. She did not scream or protest. She quietly submitted, knowing her escape had come to an end. Baker gave her the charges in a steady but compassionate voice. He saw she wasn't evil, she was desperate. But desperation did not erase the effects. As Luna was led away, Lee stared silently, feeling a heavy, confused mix of relief, sorrow, and determination. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He would not leave her to face it alone. And, despite everything, he prayed that this time he could be the hero she needed, not by saving her from harm, but by assisting her in rebuilding herself from the ashes of her own mistakes.